Welcome, everybody. My name is Maria Barnes, and I am the chapter president of the Access Lunchtime Access Users Group chapter. Today, we're going to talk about the changes that are coming to Microsoft Access. Very soon, it's in the beta already, related to the Monaco SQL Editor. So we're going to talk about integrating the Monaco framework to improve SQL Editor capabilities. This is primarily a developer-oriented talk today. Feel free to interrupt. We can go back after the fact and play with certain things and try certain things out and that kind of thing. So we should have plenty of time to do all that fun stuff. First of all, what is the Monaco SQL Editor? The Monaco SQL Editor is the code editor that is used in Visual Studio Code. So if you've ever used that product, that same code editor or the basics for that has been adapted for use by Microsoft Access in editing SQL for queries. There is some standard IDE functionality involved in that, things like syntax highlighting, like you can see in the below picture where we've got some colors for the select statement and the from select word and the from word. We've got a different color for functions like count and max, a third color for inner join. And there's also IntelliSense built into it, which is super exciting for Access developers, and AutoComplete. Some of the standard types of things, and there's more, we'll cover it, but that's, some of the basics that we were looking for in a SQL editor in Microsoft Access. And Microsoft has delivered at least some basic functionality, as you'll see here. What does it take to get this? So it's available right now in the beta version. I've heard a couple different versions of it being started with. Officially, I think it's 24.11, build 18 to 10.20,000, which should have come out in beta on 10.15. There's been a few reports that an earlier build had it, but they also put it into beta and pulled it out of beta several times. So I've listed this one. And it will soon start rolling out to the Access 365 world, first probably in current channel preview, then current channel, then semi-annual. In a Europe-based Access user group meeting, I believe it was an in-person meeting a couple of weeks ago, the Microsoft Access team presented a session there, and they made the comment, which Carl Donabauer was gracious enough to share with us, that the current channel would have the Monaco SQL editor by the end of October. So no formal announcement from them yet other than that. And then I have to assume it will be in the next perpetual version of Access, but just for clarity, it is not in Access 2024. That is already out. That came out earlier this month, and it is definitely not included in that. Where do you find it? It is a database setting, which you can turn on or off. So we really pushed for that. Colin was a big proponent of giving the user the option, and several of us seconded that, and Microsoft was good enough to oblige us. Yes, you can turn it on by this function here, Enable Monaco SQL Editor. So if you see this option under Current Database, then you have the Monaco SQL Editor in your version. It should be turned on by default for databases if you've got the Monaco SQL Editor available in the version of Access that you're running. How will you know whether or not you have the Monaco SQL Editor or not? It will just suddenly, when it's turned on, start showing up in all of your databases that you use within the version that Monaco SQL Editor is turned on. Because the way that Microsoft has implemented this is that they have automatically turned it on by default for all databases, at least as long as they are trusted databases. So the database has to be trusted to launch the new Edge browser control, which is something that Monaco makes use of to display the SQL in the coloration, the JavaScript, etc. So if you have Monaco enabled, and then Monaco is something that's part of your version now, and you open up a database that is not in a trusted location, or if you've got the setup where you see the yellow bar across the top and you don't click that, trust this, then you will not see it. If you don't want it enabled, if you want to disable it, you have to go on a per database level. If you decide you don't want to work in it at all, you're going to have to turn it off for every database that you're going to work with. Not the most flexible of defaults, but that's how it's done for now. You would go to current database, and again, if you now have Monaco SQL Editor capabilities, you will see this new option here under current database above the display status bar option that is Enable Monaco SQL Editor. And again, the way they've implemented it, at least for now, is to have it turned on or enabled by default once you get this feature, and then you have to manually turn it off if you don't want it for each database that you're going to work in. However, if you have been working in Monaco SQL and you've been designing things and stuff, and then you pass that database, with Monaco SQL enabled by default or turned off or on or whatever, and whoever's opening that is in either an older version of 365 or one of the other non-365 versions that doesn't have the Monaco SQL Editor, their SQL should still work. If they edit in SQL, it will show using the old viewer. So the decision is made at the time of opening things in SQL about whether or not this version has Monaco available or not, and whether it's turned on for that database or not. And then it either uses the old SQL editor or the new Monaco SQL editor. So that's how it works. To answer your question, Crystal, you shouldn't be afraid of editing in this and then passing a database on to someone with an older version. So they've at least protected against that. You will still see SQL, but you won't see it like you're going to see it from the Monaco SQL editor. It won't be colorized or have autocomplete or anything. It just, yes, like Adrian says, it just reverts to the old style SQL. So that's I think, very nicely done of them.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Some of the improvements that you'll see. I mentioned colorizing some of the elements. Here are some of the colors that are used. It may be not all of them, but keywords. The blue here, like in the select, the as, the from, some of the keywords are colored in blue. The operators like inner join, or like if you have an or something like that, that is in a kind of a purple color. And then functions like count and max are in this magenta color. And I'm just going to point out that these colors that are showing here on my PowerPoint may not be the exact RGBA color that they used. I just was trying to get fairly close for demo purposes. The colors also change slightly if you use different themes. Like if you go for dark theme, for example, or some other theme, they might change slightly from these colors. So I will get to the answer about the comments. String values are in red. However, I have noticed that if you use access syntax with the double quotes around a string, it does not turn it red. Only if you're using SQL syntax for a string, like with the single quotes, then it will be red for you. Number and date values will show in green, things like integers or, a date. And then one thing that's super cool there's varying colors in nested brackets, and it's a little hard to see here. I'm going to try to zoom in so you can see a little better maybe. Take a look at this area here with the max date value order date. So the square brackets here happen to be this purple color, then the date value parentheses are a green, and then the max function parentheses are blue. This is super nice. You also get that with like inner joins and parentheses that go around that. I just think that's fabulous. Makes it much easier to read. Let me show you as a demo here. What I'm using for a demo today is the Northwind starter database. So let's take a look, for example, at the customer list. And, oh, that's not the one that shows you, but this one, well, I'm showing you more here. I've got some formatting. But like, see, we've got some nested parentheses here, and we've got some different colors. And then you can go searching like for the blue one that matches this. So that's over here instead of over here. I love this coloring of the parentheses. I think it's a great feature. To get to your question about comments, I gave comments a whole page because they're super important and super exciting. Comments are shown in green. Note that that's the same color that they picked for numbers and dates. Oh well. Currently, they're only supported at the beginning of a query. And there's two types of comment syntax that you can use. You can either use the dash, the beginning of the comment is preceded by two dashes, or you can use a multi-line comment by using the /* at the beginning of the comment and then the reverse */ at the end. That's pretty common comment syntax for a lot of other spots. I think that's what SQL Server Management Studio, for example, uses in theirs. So you should be familiar with that syntax. So you can do multi-line comments, but currently only at the beginning of your query. If you put comments in the middle of a query and you try to save it, it will throw an error when you save it. And this is the error over here on the right. It's nicely done and very clear. Invalid SQL query. Comments are only allowed at the beginning of the query. You can't save the query with that comment in the middle. So, it's not going to just like break. You can't save, so you'll have to uncomment it. Thank you, Ben. That is a good point, that when I say SQL and using SQL syntax, I'm talking about T-SQL syntax specifically. Yeah, John, I really haven't addressed that question yet, but I am going to address formatting and saving of formatting in the presentation in the next couple slides. If you have queries that already exist and you turn on Monaco SQL for that database and you open one of those queries in SQL View, you will see the new SQL View with the coloration and stuff in your old queries. So to answer that part of it. So you can add a comment and then you can switch back and forth between SQL and Design View and the comment will remain. So that is also super cool. You haven't lost the ability to go to Design View if you put a comment in, and neither do you lose the comments when you switch back and forth between the two, even if you're making changes to the Design View. However, there's a but there. To allow for that, Access is now, when you switch back out of Design View and you go into SQL, it actually does a save on the query. That is not the same behavior as you're used to. That is a difference in behavior. You're both going to see a slight delay while it does that. And if you're just playing around, this will have the added syntax that you will be maybe having to save a query that you didn't want to save, and you're going to end up with queries that you don't really want in your database, like query 1, query 2, query 3, or whatever. The comments are actually stored in a brand new system table called MSysSQLComments. And it actually gets created the first time that you create a comment in a SQL query. So it's not there before, but even if you turn the Monaco SQL editor off and then you're seeing other stuff, and then you decide to turn it back on, if you put a comment like this, it will still be there. And let me just turn, maybe I already have it turned on here. Yes, I turned on the sys object so you can see it. Here is the table. It's pretty simple. All it has is the comment, and it's got the query name. So that's how it connects it in there. I will have a whole page here on limitations. One of the limitations is that right now you cannot have comments in the middle. And I'm going to talk more about that as well. But I am hoping, Colin says he doubts it, I am hoping they will add that. To answer Crystal's question, I am going to cover that too. But no, any changes you make to the format, like in this case, these are some of the cool things you can do. You can do indenting, to make things more readable. That formatting does not stick. And I'll show you what it actually does when you save and then open it up again. Okay, here are some of the other improvements. You have the ability to change the font size on the fly using the Control+ and Control-. Let me demo that. Go back just to this. So you can use Control+, and it's kind of like zooming, Control-. However, whatever you have zoom to, like if you zoom to this and you close it and you come back in, it will show the original size. Let me address at this time how you can use something a little bit different than what it has as its default. Under Options, under the Object Designers, so this is application dependent. Under Query Design, there's a Query Design font and a Query Design size. That is what the Monaco SQL editor is using to have its default font and its default size. So you can change those here, and then they would be effective for everything. But you can also, change on the fly during your design session. Yes, MSysSQLComments, Crystal, is a new system table, and it only gets created when you save your first comment. Some other things that you can do, you can use either F1 or you can use the right click and command palette. And there's a bunch of other commands that you could use in this SQL editor. It should display the most recently used commands that you have used near the top. So if you end up with a favorite, then that will migrate up to the top so that you can easily select it in the future. You can also, as you see, there are shortcuts to these. You can use those shortcuts. So Ctrl-F for find and Ctrl-H for replace. I think so. Let's just see. Yep. So those still work. They're the same ones. Let's do Ctrl-H. Yep. So it's a standard ones that you're used to, for the most part. But yeah. Line numbers. Now, the way it's doing line numbers is that if you do a hard return on something, like if you went like this, it would start a new line number. However, like I think I've mentioned and people have asked, it won't save that hard return. It's considered a formatting option. It won't save that if you save the query and go out and go back in, but it does seem to have some kind of sense that it's using in lines. The comment, if you have it, would be its own line. Then the select statement along with any of the fields, comma, separated is the second line. The table section is the third line. And then, in order, if you had like a where, it would be the fourth line, and then order by 5, that kind of thing. So, that's how it does those default ones. It does not let you save a comment. I mean, you could go in here and you could comment this out and it will show like a comment, but if you try to save this, it's going to tell you that you can't do that. It's invalid SQL. Some other cool things. Selecting a word highlights that word in all places in the query. There's also a Change All Occurrences function. So let me demo that. This is really cool. I like it. If you click on customers, voila, customers everywhere it shows is highlighted. I love this. And then there's also the Change All Occurrences. I found this to be just a little funky in how it works, but if you wanted to say do customers new everywhere, you could do that with this. Isn't that exciting? I love this. How many times have you tried to do that and, oops, you left one out and you did a find and replace, and it actually, for a lot of purposes, it totally eliminates the need for find and replace, IntelliSense for table level, field level, and even control names within forms, like if you've got parameters or something like that, and autocomplete along with that. So let me demo both of those things. Do you have to highlight them first for the Change All Occurrences? I think it's wherever you click. You do have to click someplace in order to get that to happen. For example, if you start typing, oops, I know what I did there, but some kind of control key here. If I start typing here, then, I can see, for example, if there's the customers table here, and within that, I get all the fields. And so I could sit there and, start typing the notes. And then it's also got the autocomplete. So if you hit tab, it fills in the rest of whatever you were selecting. If you were doing some parameters here, say you were doing where, and you wanted a form name, you could get the form or customer list dot customer name equals Mary, or, whatever. Super cool. Does it respect table aliases? I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Crystal. Are you talking about like as primary contact? For example, here, in other words, could I do where,
like from customer as C or something like that?
So on the aliases,
like
if
that?
you change them in design view, not the SQL view, then Access will modify all the places in the SQL where you want to use that alias, but there's no IntelliSense for the aliases.
Okay, so you're saying if I did this, for example, would it change it here? Doesn't look like.
No. I like to assign the alias in design view rather than SQL view.
I understand.
Okay. Yeah. But IntelliSense never worked for the alias. You have to like type the whole name out for the IntelliSense to kick.
So you're saying here, could I type C dot? Looks like it.
Oh, cool.
Is that what your question was?
I guess so. But obviously, since you changed it in your SQL, you'd have to like completely modify your SQL statement yourself, which is why I change it.
Yeah, you would have to do but you could do it with that replace. I could just go up here and use that change all occurrences and do a C. How simple is that, right? Although you have to be careful because it got this one.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yep. You do have to be a little careful with that. Yep. All right, I'm gonna save this query and not so I get a fresh query here. All right. Let's look at the indent though. So it does allow for indenting like I started to do on here. I love this kind of stuff. I hate queries let me show you what this query looks like without that formatting. I know I called it query invoice formatted, but it doesn't save the formatting. Repeat, that's a negative. So it just comes in like this, and look at the little bit of delay that we have opening that. Did you notice that? I'm going to talk about that too as one of the disadvantages. But I'll get a query like this and I'm trying to debug it. Something's not working right. And I'm like, okay, this is hard to read, right? I don't like it like this. What I like to see, and by the way, in SQL Server Management Studio, I use a tool from Redgate called SQL Format, which I just love, which will put things in like what I like, which is, I'm going to inner join here, and then I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to tab over so I know like how things line up. So it does let you indent like this. However, it won't save this formatting. It won't save the indents. It'll go back to the square one. So that's a negative. The other thing that we've talked about already that I love to use while I'm debugging is commenting out things. Say I wanted to comment out this section, right? And then debug the query with that in it. I would love to be able to do that, right? Such power in doing something like that, but you can't do that with this version. So Ben has a hotkey script that will format SQL statements in any editor. That is super cool, Ben. Is that something that you have shared with others that you could post a link to or anything? Or
yeah, I have it. So let's have to look where it is.
Okay, I would totally be interested in that. That's a really cool feature. I know people have add-ins and stuff that do that. I've been too lazy to find and install one, but in any case, I like that kind of thing. But then again, it doesn't help too much if you can't save it, long-term in queries, but at least you could, do it for when you had to do some debugging or something. Then here we come with the known issues and limitations. The Monaco SQL editor is a little bit slow to load. You're going to notice a lag when it's opening, unlike using the old SQL editor. And you're going to see it every time. If you just load from starting with SQL, if you switch back and forth between design and then SQL, and this has to do with using JavaScript from the Edge browser control. If you've used the Edge browser control during the last year or so, you'll realize that it also has some lag compared to the old Internet Explorer control. That's something that, for the moment, the Microsoft Access team doesn't have direct control over, but a team that does have control over that Edge browser control is supposed to be working on the speed. And so I am hopeful that as they make improvements with the speed, that we will then see that side benefit in the Monaco SQL editor as well. And yes, Adrian, you bring a good point. That was one of our biggest reasons that we lobbied for making this an optional item, because some people will get so frustrated with that speed, they just it won't be worth it to use it. changing to the SQL view from design view requires the query to be saved. I mentioned that earlier, but that's definitely a limitation and a difference in between the old way and the new query editor. Changes to font size and formatting do not persist. Comments can only be added at the beginning of a query, and it makes commenting out sections of a query to debug it a current impossibility. The only thing I can think of that the Access team is going to have to do in order to allow comments in the middle, to allow formatting changes to be saved, is to somehow save the query as like a rich text or something like that. But then that does add a whole bit of complexity. You know, they really want to keep the ability to be able to switch back and forth between design view and SQL view. And if you have like a rich text version saved someplace in a table, for example, they could use that table that they developed to store the comments in. If you have that stored and then you make a change in design view, you know, what are you going to do at that point? Are you only going to overwrite it at that point? Because you need to somehow keep them in sync. So it is an issue and there is difficulty. So I get why they didn't do something on this first pass. But anyway, I'm hopeful for the future that they can add more features to this. So this one I consider a little bit of a bug. If you try to drag a table or a query into the Monaco window, instead of adding the table name, like doing that from design view does, it actually adds field headers and values from the table in there. It's really odd. So that's to me a bug. Just don't do it. Don't drag tables or queries into the Monaco editor. If you want to do a drag and drop, switch to design view and drag it there and then flip back. And then finally, certain special characters, like for example, the box character, aren't displayed correctly in the Monaco SQL editor. That might be something you use in a where clause or perhaps in a replace function or something like that, where you're trying to, you know, clean odd characters out or, you know, test for certain characters for certain purposes. It is a little bit dependent upon the font you use for your query design, because certain special characters are available in certain fonts and the others, but it might be a bit more complicated than that. I know Colin has run across it and he's been exploring it. I don't know that I have a good feel and the limitations, but watch out for special characters. Okay, then I'm leaving you with a couple resources. The first is to Microsoft's Access Team's documentation on the Monaco SQL Query Editor. It's fairly good and has some pretty basic information about how to use it and the features that are there, most of which I think we've covered in today's topic, but it's nonetheless a great source of reference for you. And then I will give you this link in the chat, which is an excellent article that Colin Riddington wrote that has all of these things and more, and some more examples and stuff like that. So take a look at that for added information. So that's all I have. If you would like to come off mute and ask any questions, you are more than welcome to. Did I miss any in the chat?
Yes, there's one at the end there just before you posted your last message.
Your question here about, does the MSE affect what SQL is returned from a QueryDef.SQL property? It should not. It should be whatever you see. Let's try that here. What I'm guessing, Adrian, is that in that they don't store the comments. They store the comments in that separate table, and then they just bring them in. So you're not going to see the comment. They don't save the formatting, so you're not going to see it in there, right?
I'm with you. So
yep.
I'd love to have a look, but
let me take a look for sure here, but that's what I'm guessing. So of course I haven't saved this, but I'm going to go ahead and save now. Oh, it won't let me. See, there's that thing because I
Comment
put a
halfway
comment
through.
in, but let me take the comment back out. And notice I have some line spaces and,
I
you know,
do, indeed.
add characters or whatever. So now I can save it. And then let's pull up a BB window and let's go down here and let's go current, oops, if I can
Your
type,
attempt.
BB QueryDefs. And it was what? Invoice formatted?
I didn't
I
see
think that's quite right. Let me look. Query invoice formatted.
underscore. QRY, yeah.
Yeah. .SQL. Whoops. Yeah, can't type.
Is that one or an
one
L?
instead of an L? Oh, come on. There we go. Yep.
Right, no new lines,
No extra anything.
no
Yep.
spaces.
So
it's
it's taking
fine.
that SQL that's stored like we would normally see it, and it's adding the line numbers, it's adding the comment from that table when it pulls it into the Monaco SQL editor. So,
Cool.
All it's doing is formatting.
yep.
You can see it another way by exporting your Monaco SQL into Notepad or another program and see what the results are. And you'd get in Notepad, you get the same as this. If you put it into Word, you'll get the same as that as well. If you put it into Excel, you'll get the Monaco's formatting.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I don't know why, but that's something I discovered by chance because I was trying to find a way of preserving the problems with special characters. So yeah, if you try and copy.
Wonder if that has to do with the paste defaults of Excel, like format, you know, they've got that once you paste, you've got several options like, you know, merge formatting, that kind of stuff.
No, it'll be because it's getting the HTML out of the browser and copying it as HTML into which Excel interprets.
Oh, okay.
I imagine if you're copying it from an Edge browser, it'll be reading as HTML, and you paste it into Excel, it will post it with formatting.
Because
I thought it would do that into Word though, and it didn't.
Richard, do you have a question?
Really great presentation. I'm curious, is the Monaco Editor available in pass-through queries?
That's a good question. I would expect it to be. Let me see if I can pull up something with a pass-through query and see.
You could just make a query, copy the SQL from one statement and paste it into an object and just make it a pass-through.
Without connecting it to something?
Yeah, without saving a connection string, yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, let's try that. Let's go to employee list. And let's make it pass through. Yeah, it doesn't affect it. It should do the same thing. It's not like that query is really saved in wherever you're passing through, like, you know, SQL is the most common one. And you have to do the SQL syntax in that case, you know, as opposed to the T-SQL syntax, as opposed to the access syntax of queries, which there can be slight differences in that.
Speaking of T-SQL, be cool if it could, since you're connected to the database, if it could IntelliType the stored procedures. That would be kind of neat.
Yeah, I don't think it'll get there now, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Chris has a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you like the hotkeys for commenting and such work in the Monaco editor here? So
do the hotkeys?
Yeah, so like Control-K or Control-KC. I don't know, what is it for Monaco? I'm used to like Visual Studio and such. So
Okay, so the command palette is here. So to add a comment, add a line comment is Control-K.
Control
And then,
Control-C.
yeah, Control-K, Control-C. So if I tried that here, for example, and I did Control-K, Control-C, then it will comment like that. So of course you can't save this comment because
Actually, because it's a pass-through query now, you could.
I don't think so, but
I'm going to say, you sound confident, Chris.
ooh, look at that.
That's bad because we use comments in our pass-through queries all the time.
No, it's saying it does save it.
Yeah,
It does
did
save it.
Oh, I thought it gave an error. Sorry.
No,
I
it
know,
did
I
not.
wasn't expecting
It
it
gave
to.
you a warning. It asked if you wanted to save it.
Oh, sorry.
So yes, you can. Yep.
Did the warning include the fact that it had a comment in it?
No, the warning just had to do with saving it. It was this warning.
So
Do you
what
want
you
to
could
save
do-
changes to it?
Yeah, that's the standard stuff. So
Yeah.
here's a thought. What if you made all your queries pass-through queries, it's saved all your comments that you wanted, and then when you run them, obviously not directly from the interface, but if you run them from code, you just say, oh, no, I wouldn't really.
We already do that,
Yeah.
Adrian. Ben and I are already doing that.
Yeah, but it means you've got to, it does mean that you've got to update the query with
Connection
your
string.
code and save the design of the database. In other words, you can't do that on an ACDE.
Could you pull the SQL from the pass-through and run it?
The other advantage that it gives you is we're actually able to stack multiple queries in the same query then too. So,
Yeah.
More like a CTE in SQL Server, and we're able to do that in Access. But having Monaco available to us now is going to make our life so much easier in that realm. Yeah, this is cool.
The one thing you can do on a simpler level is you can disable the first clause in a union query.
You
Or
can
the first two
disable
clauses.
The what?
Right, if you've got a union query, you can
Oh.
disable the entire first clause, or if
Yeah.
you've got 3 or 4, you can disable all except the last one.
Right.
So
right.
as long as it's at the beginning.
Right.
Could you just go back and show me what you did again to turn that into a pass-through query?
So the only thing
Distracted.
I did, it was a regular query, and I went to Query Design View, and I selected pass-through right here. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
That's it. Someone else had the question about whether there is anything else in the query design, and I had not looked at that, but it does not appear to be. I don't see anything else. I think these are all the standard options that were available before.
I'm guessing the pass-through, that when you click on it, it sets a simple yes-no property in the QueryDef that says, oh, I'm now a pass-through. Or, a single, not even
Well, and
just
then
approve
it makes use of the property sheet and this ODBC Connect option, which you typically set then to the connection to the server or database where, it's passing through to.
That's a standard thing available on QueryDef. It's a QueryDef property. It's just not used unless you have a pass-through set. All you need to do to switch them is to change that one property. I mean, it's not going to work
Yes.
perfectly, but if you do that,
Yes. Yeah.
other things. But that's all you need. It's basically a single change of the property.
Yep. All right. Other questions? Or things you want to try here together?
What do you get when you right click just in the white space?
You get cut, copy, paste, that command palette, or change all occurrences.
Can we look at the command palette again?
Mm-hmm. And this does have a dragger, quite large, lots of commands. I haven't tried them all by any chance.
How about code folding?
Which one?
That was pretty neat at the bottom. It was talking about folding. Unfold.
Oh, that's a good idea. So I think you would have to go to something. Okay, so let's see.
There were fold options at the top of that list, or near the
You might
top.
want to type fold in there.
I'm just going to type, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so it's got a hotkey. Oh, heck. Nope, doesn't seem to work. That'd be cool, the plus and minus of, expand. Hopefully you're familiar with what he's talking about there, where you can do that typically in a lot of type of code editors to fold up sections of code.
What with a little plus thing at the edge, or the arrow that either up or down, or a plus minus box.
My guess is that they stole the help from whatever the primary use of the Monaco editor is, and they haven't cleaned it up. But they probably should clean it up.
That was a question.
As to what they're supporting, yeah, I agree. I would bet that although there's lots of commands here, not all of these work. We tried the add line comment, and that definitely works, but not all of them will work.
What is a cursors? I don't understand add cursors.
Aren't cursors a T-SQL term for a data set?
yes.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what it means here. I bet
don't
you would
think
stole
so
it from-
either. See, these are the cursors.
Oh,
I think that's what it means.
okay.
So,
Add cursors. See, that's what it means.
What if you type right now? Does it type on all lines?
Yep.
Okay. Does this allow vertical selection?
Vertical selection, meaning?
Well, do what you just did, and then...
Like hold down the Alt key and select up.
Alt or Shift?
I think it's Alt.
Hold down Alt and Shift and press the down arrow.
Alt, Shift, down. Nothing.
And then press right, and then see if it selects the first two letters of the... Oh, that did a copy.
Ooh.
Wow. That's duplicated.
Hey, Control-Z works.
So vertical selection would be useful if you had each select statement on its own line and you wanted to comment out 3 of those.
Right.
So can you put a carriage return at the end of your comma, after each comma? Just a quick, yeah, I like that. Some of those in there. Now, are you able to comment out lines 2, 3, and 4 at the same time by selecting vertically?
And how am I going to do that? Alt? Shift?
In Notepad++, you hold the Alt key to do a vertical selection.
Alt,
you can hold the Alt and you drag the mouse, or you can hold the Alt and Shift and use the arrow keys. But I think it's going to do something different. Oh, you got it. Now if you type dash dash.
Yep.
Okay. So how did you miss the middle row?
I did all, let's see, let me try this again. It'd be nice if you could see what I'm doing on my screen. I did Alt, and then I just selected number 4.
Oh, okay. You're clicking the lines.
You probably want to do Alt Shift select.
Alt Shift, and then click, then it selects them all, and I could comment them out like that.
Okay. But there's no keyboard alternative without using the mouse.
I don't know.
Well, I would have said Alt Shift down arrow, down arrow.
That would have been another option rather than clicking on the last one.
Indeed.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff to play with. There is potentially some power here. It's going to take some getting used to, obviously. But if you're used to working in the Monaco editor in, some other, like whether it's Visual Studio Code or something else, those things might be natural to you, and you might try those same things in here.
When you have parentheses, does it automatically highlight the other parenthesis when you move to the one end?
I don't believe so. I would love that. Some editors do that, and I love that. Okay, so I've got, oops, that's not the one I wanted.
It's got parentheses in it.
Well, yeah, I suppose. It's got
pretty
this
long
one.
trim there.
Oh, it does.
It does.
So that's another cool thing. Do you see how this one's highlighted? So it shows you where it goes. If you've got parentheses, especially on something like, what was that query invoices formatted that I had here, that something like this, right? And you're wanting to know where that goes to. Okay, the fact that this is highlighted, that's not as good as indentation in my mind, but it's something like it, right? You can see where this goes and what it belongs to. I love the editors where like begin and end also get highlighted, right? Where so you can see the end that corresponds to the begin, because that's something that I, commonly, you got an end where you didn't mean it to be, or you thought there was an end where there wasn't one, and that kind of thing. So
if you add a space between lines 1 and 2 and then go to datasheet view, it'll still work.
Go to datasheet view.
When you say space, you mean a new line, Colin?
New line, yeah, sorry.
Like this?
Yeah, now go to datasheet view and it still works.
Datasheet view, not design view?
No, datasheet view.
Just like this?
Yeah.
But
When you
then
come back,
when I go back.
And now if you go back, it will still have the space.
Oh!
And what if you
in other
save
words,
it? What do you have?
But if I close.
Oh, if you save it and go back, it will lose it.
Yeah. Okay.
But I want to see it. I had a similar question because it looks like it's putting a carriage return in front of the from statement, which is really nice because I don't think the default one does that on keywords.
Well, see, it's all back.
Because the regular access editor would put from, it would make it, all this would be one line, wouldn't it?
So for clarity, they have made that improvement. The from starts a new line. We added these lines. So if you saved it.
So each clause is a new line. Each SQL clause starts a new line.
That's a big improvement. I mean, it's a tiny improvement towards formatting, at least.
It is, but it is an improvement. The default is to have the select statement on one line, the from statement on its own line, and then like if we had a where, it would be on its own line, the order by on its own line. So it has broken that out. You're not going to see the run-on where from is at the end of employee's title.
It wouldn't be anyway. Even in ordinary SQL, even in the old editor.
Yeah, it would.
Yes, it would. No, it wouldn't. It would just be continuous.
Yeah. So
No,
it
won't. If you go into the SQL view of a query, it does separate with a line break before each keyword.
Turn off Monaco, Maria.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I'm going to have a quick look on
keywords.
My one here.
It just doesn't do that.
So before I play that much more here, I just want to mention next month's meeting is the last Tuesday in November for the US-based people. That is early in Thanksgiving week. We are going to have George Young come and speak to us on using web APIs in Microsoft Access. He's going to show 2 different approaches to that. It's an exciting talk that he's got prepared. So please join us again for that.
Just to clarify on that last one, even the old version does a new line for each clause.
Really?
It's just that it wasn't colored, so our eyes could never see it.
That could well be the case. It's
and it's not numbered.
Clause. It's not numbered, but they've always been, as far as I can remember, they've always been on new lines. I've done lots and lots of work with manipulating the text in those.
Good correction, Crystal. What does a union query look like in Monaco Editor?
Pay attention to. Okay, so I got to turn Monaco Editor back on. Let's see. I'm not sure if they have one already in here or if I don't see anything. So let's create a new query. I'm going to start it in
You could just copy the SQL from an existing one and paste it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, let's just make. Okay, here, let me show you how you have to save. See, you have to do this save as, right? I already got a query 1 in here from previous, and I got a query 2. Okay, so I want to do this.
You better put a star in there.
That's what it looks like. Not really
And then
much.
when you save it and come back, is it? I'm guessing it's going to look just like that. I'm guessing because those are keywords.
That's what I'm guessing too, but good. Does. No, not quite. You combine that.
Union select.
Yeah. Not my fave, but yeah. So yeah, Jim, just to make clear, there's no real formatting saved at all. You can format inside of the window, but it doesn't save that. It always builds what it's showing from the SQL as stored in the QueryDef. And yeah, somebody who said something about the speed. I don't know, maybe they took the comment down.
I think it was Neil made a comment about using adding the local host to the hosts file.
So I wasn't sure. I saw that briefly. What did you mean by that?
Basically, if you use the Edge browser with local files, it performs like a dog, and you have to go into the hosts file and put MS Access into your hosts file to tell it to circumvent going out to your DNS to work out where, you know, the silly MS Access precursor for they put on.
So how would I do that? Where would I find this file?
Hosts, Windows system, etc., drivers, hosts. You know, the host file.
No, I don't. So,
okay.
So you go to like.
It would only have the effect if they're using it local files, and I suspect they're not. That's peculiar to using the Edge browser with local file browsing, I think.
Neil, just to clarify some of that, I think some of the work that Edge does within there does use something local. I've heard elsewhere that adding something to the host file speeds that up. By the way, Maria, adding to the host file, but that's to do with name resolution. So where you find an IP address for a particular name on the web, that is name resolution. And sometimes the last thing it finds is something that it DNS, which is the service that provides that, doesn't think to look locally, and it doesn't find out until it's gone through everything else, and then that can cause a big delay. So if you have it in the host file, that gets looked at first. So if you could,
I'm still unclear where I find a host file. Is this in the file browsing area?
Yeah, it's in Windows.
I go to C drive, and then I go.
There is a place in Windows where the host file always exists. You'll find it on the web. I don't have it immediately to hand. It's always like system, Windows system or system 32. You will always have a host file. It comes.
Right. I can give you the address.
I'll put it
I'm putting in the chat now.
For drives, etc. Okay.
Yeah, drivers, etc.
That's the one that rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah. Has somebody put it in there already or not?
Yeah, I've just put it in.
Yeah, I see it.
I want to backslash it.
So I could go to this file.
There's a file in there called hosts, which you have to open with Notepad. It's a text file.
What's the entry you need to add, Neil?
I just put in.
I'm just going to I'll put it in the chat.
I've just done it.
Neil's just done it. Well done.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so there's a normal hosts file, and you have to edit it. Okay, I'm gonna drag so people can see.
It speeds the Edge browser up for local file browsing by about a factor of 15.
Well, that's a good trick to know.
It's an essential thing. If you use the Edge browser for file browsing,
I didn't know
essential.
that.
Within Access. Within Access.
So you have to add then.
Literally, just as a line at the bottom of the file, just plonk that in. Because what happens when the Edge browser browses a local file, it puts a MS Access prefix in front of it. So it goes looking for HTTPS / MS Access / and then your file path name. So it's telling it to go and find it as a, and what this does is basically say, instead of going to find that via Google and out on the internet, just bypass it and look on your local drive.
So if I do this.
That's perfect. Save it.
So what does the MS Access part of that mean compared to being localhost?
I'm telling you to look on the local host to look for MS Access prefix or domain, basically. Because what they've done is to do the whole trusted sources thing in the Edge browser. They've
seen that much quicker.
MS Access. Yeah, I doubt if it'll have an effect on this because it's to do with opening a local file in the Edge browser. So it depends on how it was working, but I suspect it's just doing it straight through the probably through Java or something in the.
And so
I think it's just for local HTML files, Neil. It's not relevant to this. It's purely for the
Okay. And it wouldn't be relevant to using the Edge browser to browse the internet either, right?
But if you use it as a PDF viewer or
something like that, then it would be good. Okay, I got it.
Just to clarify that last thing, one point that wasn't mentioned was that it only affects the first time you look for any particular address. Once you've resolved an address and found the IP address, then it will remember that. So testing it now won't have any effect because whatever you've done, you've already done before in this session. If things start slowly and then generally are less slow afterwards, this is the sort of thing that is likely to affect that. Does that make sense?
Really?
I'm not sure.
No, Ben. Okay. When you do, there are certain things that you have to do which only get done on load, as in they only get done the first time you need something. Going to LM hosts, having that in LM hosts would only affect the first time you do something. So if you do something like this, which you've been doing in this session,
you'd have to close access and reopen to have an effect.
Essentially,
I'll try that.
Even that, you might have to restart your computer to notice any effect because it's already resolved in its name service cache.
I think it's very unlikely to have an effect.
I was just going to say, Maria, if your computer doesn't reboot after this, call Neil.
Come up.
Rule number 1, never dig around with a host file.
For the heck of it.
Things you don't change before doing a presentation.
Exactly.
This is the right time of the presentation to try this at the very end.
Yeah, because we already covered everything, right?
If it all goes horribly belly up, it's I wasn't going to cover this anyway. There's nothing that's important.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for today. And I thank you all for joining us. Please do consider joining us in November as George Young talks about web APIs and calling them from Microsoft Access. Thank you much. And hopefully the rest of you will get access to this new feature soon. I do think it's super exciting that we are getting like a developer feature that we've all been wanting. So yeah, thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you.